So today is the 19th of February, and less than a week ago, on the 13th of Feb, I celebrated the first year of my nomad life. I left the UK on the 13th of February 2019, and then I had this idea to just create like some videos that will take you back through this journey that I went on in the past year. So what I'm going to do with you guys is I'm going to release this first video, which I'm going to tell you about how I got into the nomad life, because I think there's a lot of people who started following me halfway through and they kind of don't know how it happened. And then in the next 10 days, each day I'm going to post a video talking about a different country that I lived in. I went to more than 10 countries in the past year, but I'm only going to cover the ones that I volunteered in and I like spend some actual time in them. So each day I'm going to talk about my experiences, I'm going to talk about what I learned, I'm going to talk about, I don't know, from the smallest things of like, I shouldn't have packed this was stupid, like sharing my mistakes with you guys, but also to like some deeper stuff that I learned from a trip. Like, you can't just go nomad all of a sudden and not change and not learn things. So yeah, but in this initial video I'm going to tell you about how I became a nomad. So I left the UK on the, as I said, on the 13th of Feb last year, 2019. I lived in the UK for 7 years, so that explains the accent. What I did was I moved here when I was 21 to go to university. I spent 3 years here, graduated in public relations, and then I had the opportunity to work here. A company decided to sponsor me, which is something ridiculously hard to happen because the work visa, I don't have an European passport, so the work visas are really tough to get in this country. I ended up working in Manchester for 3 years. And in July 2018, I was made redundant. So if you don't know what be made redundant means, it means so when your position in a company no longer exists. So basically, it's like you're fired, but it's not your fault. Like, you didn't do anything, you're just made redundant. And my visa was obviously connected to my job. So at the minute that I didn't have a job, I didn't have a visa. And for reasons that I'm not going to bore you with, it's very hard to then get new employment once you're not a graduate anymore and once you're past a certain age. So it did mean the minute I lost my job, it meant that I had to leave the country. In that process, I was also in a relationship with a man, and I went through some really difficult personal shit in that time, because I felt pregnant about like 3 months after I lost my job. Because when you lose your job, you don't have to immediately leave the country. The Home Office takes a while to sort of process the curtailment of your visa. And then in that time, it was what, 6 months by the time that they told me that I had to leave. So I was here, I couldn't work, but I was still here sort of negotiating my severance package with the company. And I was in a relationship, and then I felt pregnant, so it was all like snowballing very quickly. To give you an idea of how this all happened, on Thursday, I found out that I was pregnant. On Saturday, my boyfriend left me, and on Monday, I got the letter from the Home Office telling me to leave the country. So they gave me 60 days to leave at that point. And I'm not going to go into detail because I don't want it to make it like a sob story, but it does, I need to tell you this because you need to understand like how I left this country and how this whole trip started, like what my frame of mind was, especially when we watch the first 2 countries. Like, you will see a huge difference in how I looked then and how even how I talked. So that happened. After I fell pregnant, as I said, my boyfriend left me, and I would have been very lucky if he just disappeared, but he didn't. There was some really serious problems that I had in this relationship, in that there was domestic violence. Yeah, it wasn't pretty. I'm trying not to get into a lot of detail again. So I finally had an abortion in January of 2019. And oh my god, Andrew, you're talking openly about having an abortion. Yes, I talk about my abortion to anyone who asks me. because I think it's super important that women who have had abortions speak up, because if they want to, obviously, if they feel comfortable doing it, which I do, because there's a huge abortion discussion going on and we're not listening to the voices of the women who've had them. So I speak up about it. I am proud about it in the sense that I did the one thing that I could do at the time to save my life, because he put me through a lot of stress, to say the least. Let's call it stress, yes. He and his family put me through a lot of stress. Let me just quickly show you what I've done so far. So all this stuff is now listed for sale on Facebook. Basically, I had the money, I didn't have anywhere else to be. I could go home straight away, obviously, but I don't want to do that. So I thought it was a perfect opportunity to then go and see the world. And then when I left in February, I was completely broken. Like, the only thing I did have was money, because obviously when you're made redundant, the company has to pay you a severance package. So I did have money, I didn't have any concerns in that front, but mentally, like, you will see it, like, when you watch the Portugal videos, like, I had no self-esteem whatsoever. Even the way I spoke, like, I spoke very quietly. You can see that, like, I'm not confident at all, because I had practically, 2 or 3 months of people just trying to put me down. I was under a lot of pressure in my last few months in England until I had an abortion. So that was, like, the difficult part of leaving the UK. So that's why I always say that I was kind of forced to leave. I was forced to become a nomad. Of course I could go back to Brazil if I wanted to, but I always had it very clear in my mind that I would only go back if I wanted to, like, not because the circumstances were forcing me, because I would feel like I'm going back empty-handed, and I didn't want that. I decided to go on this trip, and when I left the UK, I had no plans, like, no concrete plans. The aim is to travel freely with no plans, just see where it takes me, and if after a month I decide that I don't want to travel anymore, I will stop. I only had the 4 weeks of voluntary exchange confirmed in Portugal. That's all I had. And then the other thing I had in my favour was that during that time that I was waiting for the Home Office to kick me out of the country, I got an online job. So basically what I do is a bit boring. It's easy as hell, but a bit boring. Is I used to do mystery shopping in the UK. If you don't know what mystery shopping means, is when you go into a store, and usually I do it in, like, luxury stores like Gucci and stuff. So you go into a store and you pretend to be a customer, and then you assess the service, you respond, you, like, fill in a questionnaire, and they use it for training of the staff and stuff like that. So it's very simple. I used to do that in the UK after I got fired, because I was still in the UK and I needed to pay my bills. Then one of the agencies I worked with, they offered me the chance to proofread the questionnaires, and this could be done online. So I started doing that during that time, and then obviously it became, I thought of it like as being the perfect opportunity for me to try the nomad lifestyle. I don't make a fortune doing it. It's more about the flexibility. I think the balance between, like, pay and flexibility is great, because I haven't found another remote job that I can be so flexible, because there's a minimum amount of work that I have to do every week, but I can do more if I want to have more money. I can do less. If I want to take a complete break from it, I just have to let them know. And it keeps me traveling. Sometimes I even get to save money while I'm traveling, which is incredible. And obviously the volunteering helps as well, because if I was to pay for my accommodation, I wouldn't be able to travel. But we'll get into that as we cover the countries. For now, I'm going to leave this right here. So right now, I am leaving the UK, Lisbon bound, for my first volunteer experience, after having gone through a bit of a pickle, let's put it like that, in the UK. So I'll see you in the next video about Portugal. Good morning, everyone. It's precisely 5-something a.m, very precise for you. Just had the longest day, I've not slept, and I'm here in Manchester Airport waiting for my flight to Lisbon.